doing? Oops. In typical Swiss punctual fashion, my host met me right at the spot where the bus dropped me off at Linière at the exact appointed time that we had set up. And from that point on, my host had to drive me in her car the rest of the way up the mountain to her farm. After we got to the farm, my host noticed that I was really jet lagged, and I decided to take a short little nap. After I got up, my host asked me if I wanted to accompany them on a trip down to the lake, and afterwards a visit to this medieval festival that was going on later that night. And I said, why not? So on the ride there, this is Danielle, and this is my host, Valérie, and this is Lucy. And in the trunk here we have Dune, their 3-month-old Australian Shepherd Border Collie mix. It was at the lake when I realized that I was finally here, that I was doing this while watching the sunset over the mountains. I was like, man, I'm really doing it. And it just kind of hits you. I don't really know how else to describe it, but it was a pretty glorious feeling at the moment. We didn't get to stay at the lake for that long. I mean, the sun was setting, it was getting a little dark, and the medieval festival was about to kick off, so we decided to go over there. This was kind of a funny sight in my opinion, because we have like this Swiss family dragging along their Asian American dude from the United States, and how no one was batting an eye. And that's when it occurred to me that this is a regular occurrence for these people. Maybe not even just for my hosts, but for many people in rural Switzerland, where they would potentially recruit people from overseas doing stuff like Woof, just to come over. In fact, my host later told me that communication with me has been among the easiest among all their volunteers because I knew French, and I just couldn't imagine how bad it could have been with people who didn't know any French at all. The next day was Sunday, and if you're not religious in Europe, then Sunday is a day where you literally do nothing. I was so tired, I just slept. Monday was when the work began. The primary objective was that Danielle and I would go to this plot of land and lay down a new fencing for the sheep that my hosts owned. It was like this fairly large tract of land. We had like a bunch of pickets wrapped around in fencing. We just like laid down the pickets and wrapped the fencing around it. It was here when Danielle asked me to drive the truck. The problem was that it was a manual drive, and I've never driven manual before. So here I was in Switzerland driving stick for the first time off-road in someone else's vehicle. First time for everything, right? And after we laid down the fencing, later that day, my host had to transfer one of her rabbits with one of her neighbor's rabbits who owned a rabbit farm. So I went down there with them to check it out. It's a different farm. And it was here where I, for the first time, fait le bis, right? Which is doing the kissy thing that French-speaking cultures do, where you like do the rabbit farm person just kind of like expected it from me. It was just like a thing that it was so normal for them. I was like, oh, okay, I'll do it. Cultural experiences, right? Am I right? The day started off after waking up. We needed to transport the sheep from my host's farm over to the new tract of land that we fenced the day before. That was my first time working with sheep, and sheep are funny little creatures. They'll just like give you blank stares. Herding them is actually not that difficult either. You just have to like entice them with some food, and if one goes, all of them will follow. Valerie was in the lead with the food, and Danielle and I had to make sure that the sheep didn't get distracted by like patches of grass, and we needed to like nudge them forward. After that, we had to go, Valerie and I, make pasta at our little pasta operation. There was like a little machine that like made the little pasta, and I helped with packaging, wrapping, labeling, organizing, cleaning. Normally what took her quite a while, she said it went by pretty fast, so I was glad to feel useful. Wednesday, right when I woke up, my host came downstairs and said, quick, follow us, we need your help. And I was like, whoa, what's going on? And she hands me like this big stick. I go outside, and turns out that some of her cows escaped from her fencing. I think they escaped because they wanted to like go flirt with like the neighbor's cows or something. From a distance I could tell. I was like, oh boy, this is gonna be a morning workout. So the three of us, we had to like do like a three-pronged attack to try to like chase the cows back into the enclosure. It took a while, and I think it was much easier with 3 people than 2. I don't remember exactly what I did the rest of the day, but I do remember what I did later that day, which was firewood. So every year these people need to store firewood inside their farms because they have no other method of heating during the winter. In this case, they had a bunch of long pieces of firewood in the back of their farm. There were 2 things that needed to be done. We needed to cut them in 2 and then move them over to their shed. And this was by far the most difficult thing I did during my stay there. My first task was, as Daniel was cutting the long pieces of wood in 2, he would hand the 2 pieces to me, and I had to organize them on a large tractor flatbed. That was like doing lunges with weights like over and over and over again. There was so much firewood. And after that, we needed to deposit all of them. And this was like all hands on deck. Valerie, Danielle, me, and Lucy, we just all went out there and we had to like hand off the firewood and organize it inside the shed. It's a lot harder than what I made it sound, trust me, but it was fun. On Thursday, I remember my hosts telling me earlier, saying that I really needed to hike up Chasseral, the park that the farm was in. One thing that really surprised me was how friendly people are. I don't know if it's like a rural thing or if it's a Swiss thing, but I remember passing by people and almost every single one of them would say like bonjour or something like that. In Switzerland, wherever you go, you cannot avoid cattle. Cattle are everywhere. On Friday, my host and I came to an agreement that it would be best that I left in the morning. The schedules for getting me to the nearest train station wouldn't line up, and so I had to find my own way out. Me, being the picky person that I am, looked up the schedule online, the bus schedule, and realized that there was no way I was going to make the next bus. It was like I have to wait like 3 hours or something. So I decided to walk the whole way to the train station. Now imagine this sight. There's like this Asian guy in the Swiss countryside with a backpack on my back, just hauling ass over to the train station. Google Maps told me it was an hour and 50 minutes away. I did the whole hike, I think, in just 45 minutes. Like, there were times when I actually booked it. I was like running with like all that weight on my back because I really wanted to catch this train out. I'm a firm believer in that every experience we go through will alter our lives in more profound ways than we think. I had the privilege of working on this farm, the privilege of sharing in this common humanity from whence we all came, including the parts that may not be so desirable or even sanitary. But waking up to the sound of a rooster in time to catch the sunrise, and being able to spend time with people who genuinely care about what ends up on your dinner table, has only strengthened my belief that joys in life are much simpler than we oftentimes like to believe. It now only remains to be seen how woofing in Switzerland will have embroidered itself from this point on in the fabric of my future.